The main headlines right now are about the overthrow, or what they're trying to call the collapse of the Bashir al-Assad government in Syria. Is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? Context is everything. How do we unpack this in simple, well, not so simple, anti-imperialist nuggets so we can reflect on what's happened in the past roughly 48 hours? I mean, instinctively, if all of Israel, the United States, the West, the colonizers of yesteryear, the ongoing colonizers of today, the genocidaires, the genocidaires, the butchers of Gaza, if they're celebrating the downfall of the Syrian government, that would seem to be the first indication that this is not any type of step forward for humanity. But what they're plastering across Western headlines are these sensationalistic headlines about how horrific Bashir al-Assad, and before him Hafez al-Assad, his father, was. Certainly, Syria was not some great case of perfect socialism. That's not the argument that I'm trying to make. But Syria did exist for the past decades in an anti-imperialist way. It's one of the countries that the neocons targeted when they were bombing and recolonizing Iraq. And this is the fruition. This is the ongoing playing out of what the neocons started. When I say neocons, it doesn't matter if Republican, Democrat, it's the same intentions of recolonizing the Middle East. Netanyahu's gone to the United Nations 2 years in a row and bragged about these designs. So this is colonialism in the flesh. Now, if this uprising was led by millions and millions of Syrian people with their anti-imperialist and socialist instincts and towards egalitarianism and collectivism, that would be quite a different thing. But if the very forces carrying out the genocide of the Palestinian people are now bombing around the clock, there's been hundreds and hundreds of strikes against the Syrian Arab army, against the infrastructure of what? Of the access of resistance. So we have to have this context there. The spheres of influence. This is the only place outside of Russia and Russia's borders where Russia has military bases. Those military and naval bases, of course, now are under threat. Syria was a huge piece of the axis of resistance, along with Hezbollah. We just saw what the Zionists did to Hezbollah, displacing 1/3 of all of Lebanon in the process. The war on Syria, in the modern sense, began with the Arab Spring, which they were able to manipulate into the Arab Sting against Libya, against Syria in 2011. About 500,000 Syrians have been murdered. Displacement, more than 1/3, closer to half of all of Syria, a country of roughly 23, 24 million people. Displacement, we're talking 13, 14 million people. One of the most massive humanitarian, human rights crises across the world. So who are the protagonists of all of this death? These are Takfiri, jihadist, extremist, Islamicist forces. This is the new Mujahideen, just like the CIA and the Zionists and Western colonialism was able to manufacture a type of proxy force to fight against the social revolution that Afghanistan had in 1978, and perhaps there is the historical comparison people are looking for in terms of understanding the socio-economic reality within Syria. Syria was also forced into a type of siege socialism, no matter how far away it was from actual socialism. What does siege socialism mean? It means that a country under attack, like Afghanistan in 1978, when the CIA was paying Osama bin Laden and other agents of theirs who would go on to become the Taliban, who are back in power today in Afghanistan. What are the Syrians supposed to do in terms of defending their own interests? So this was never a civil war. This was an internationalized proxy war. This is a major blow to Palestine. Syria is one of the most important historical defenders for the past 76 years of their Palestinian neighbors, sisters and brothers, cousins. Many Palestinians have been twice and thrice refugized, kicked out of their Palestinian homeland, forced into Syria. Then with this war on Syria since 2011, again, displaced. I think these are the major points when we talk about this mujahideen element. We're talking about the recruitment of extreme Islamicists from Turkmenistan and from Tajikistan and from Turkey. What's going to happen to all of those, quote, that's what's called the Free Syrian Army and the rebels and the ones who've now marched on Damascus. And shame on, we would expect this from MSNBC and Fox, but Democracy Now! Is celebrating this as a revolution led by Zionism, a revolution led by the greatest purveyor of violence in history, as Martin Luther King called the US government. This is a gigantic step back for humanity. It has to be contextualized. What right does Israel and the West have to continually bombard, quote unquote, sovereign Middle Eastern countries? They continue to bomb the Iraqis, the Lebanese, the Syrians. They have an all-out war on Iran. And this is a battle for a key term here, the spheres of influence. This is where the Russians, the Iranians, the axis of resistance had a certain sphere of resistance. That's why Israel is bombing any of the actual anti-imperialist fortresses or resistance that's left. This is a victory for barbarism. This is a victory for capitalism. They have long salivated over control of Syrian markets. Say what you want about Bashir al-Assad. Bashir al-Assad and his father before him and the Ba'athists in Syria existed as a type of fortress before all of these imperialist interests. So for everybody out there looking at the headlines and they're going to tell you about this Syrian dungeon and it was so horrible in Damascus, now you're going to have all of this infighting among these extremist forces, and we'll never hear about Syria. Another 72 hours in the news cycle, just like they did to Libya in 2011. They'll disappear Syria, then they'll be asking for the upcoming years, how come there's millions and millions of Syrian refugees? These are refugees of Zionism, refugees of capitalism and imperialism. So I think those are some of the key bullet points so we can have a frank, honest discussion about the absolute pro-imperialist barbarity that's playing out right now in the Middle East.